everyone, welcome back to the Bloomin Basics Sew Along. Now we're getting to the especially fun part. Of course, I think I say that every time because I just love making little quilts. So at any rate, we're going to be assembling our blocks today to make the top. So you've got your applique blocks, and what you want to do is kind of lay them out so you know what's going on if you care about how this goes together. Now for me, I wanted the center part to have pink, the turquoise, the blue, and the orange all in a circle in the center. You can see that from the front of your pattern, or you can see it right here. Can you? Is it working, Brittany? Okay, good. So just so that I don't get myself confused, I like to lay them out whenever I have something I'm a little bit fussy about. So I'm going to lay them like this, and then I'm just going to turn this one over on top and turn this one here. And then sometimes, in case I might have to walk away, I'll put a pin so that I know this is the side I'm going to sew. Of course, today, I'm not walking away. I'm going to be right here. But still, it's a good practice. So what you want to do then is, oh, by the way, I should remind you, make sure that you've trimmed your blocks to be the 12.5 inches square. That's very important, because if you use it at I believe it was 14 inches, it's not going to come out as nice. It's not going to fit, basically. It's going to be a little bit of a problem for you.
And there's a trim guideline on your applique placement guide as well.
There is, to help you center it. Or if you're lucky and you have one of those 12.5 inch square rulers, you can use that. There's a lot of different special rulers we have nowadays that help us to trim things a little easier than having to always use math like we did in the past.
Math is hard sometimes.
Sometimes counting is hard, right? We like to say that around here because a lot of counting happens around here.
Tons of counting.
Tons of counting. Okay, so I have that ready, and I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam. Let me just put my little pattern instructions over there. Get this going. I'm just going to chain this one right underneath it. Okay, so now it's ready to press. You want to press one set of seams, or one seam one direction and one the opposite way.
Just like we did on the 4-patch blocks.
That's right. Just like in basic quilting, we always want to press one way and one the other way, so then they, quote, nest together nicely. And let me get my little self a little more organized here. I'll pull my little Steady Betty over here. Now you guys know we have Steady Betties. We love Steady Betty. And Steady Betty has a nice wool mat too, with the Steady Betty typical part on one side and the wool on the other, and that's a fun one to have. It's called a Woolly Betty. Do we have those in our shop too? We don't have them in our shop.
We have the 12 by 16 Steady Betty.
Oh, well, this is the size we normally use.
It's our favorite. Well, it's the one size we use the most.
Yeah. I happen to just like an awful lot of Steady Betty products, so I have a lot of them.
I was going to say, I use one. You use like 10.
I use different ones. But if anybody's interested in a Woolly Betty, just let us know. We can get you one. Maybe one day I'll show you my Woolly Betty. It's really nice because, on the wool mats, they, wait a second, I can't talk and think sometimes. I got to make sure that this is going to go the right direction, and it is, so I'm going to press it this way. But when you're doing a wool mat, if you're using a lot of steam, it'll go right through the wool mat all the way through.
Is that good or bad?
It just depends on what kind of surface you're working on with it, but the heat will go through as well. So if you want to retain more of the heat by using the Woolly Betty, it has, I guess I would say it's a board in between, so it kind of holds the heat a little bit better onto your whatever you're ironing. Yeah. I'm speechless. That rarely happens, you guys.
We're just tired from unpacking.
Yes. Okay, so now we have those together. So now I'm going to,
Let me show, hold on.
so we have the pink and blue ones here, orange and turquoise there, pink and blue here, orange and turquoise here. So now I'm going to pick this one up and just flip it over on top. And whenever I have things like this where it really matters in the center, I always do the pin for my nesting my seams first. And I'm going to put a pin right on one side of the seam and a pin on the other. It's not really necessary, but sometimes I just like to do it.
Well, and sometimes you use binder clips, like on the 4-patch blocks, I think you use binder clips.
I did. It just depends on my mood that day, I guess. And actually, I had my little binder clips in here, and I pulled them out and I looked at them and I thought, no, I'm going to use my pins today.
And last week it was the opposite.
And last week I was like, oh, I'm going to play with my binder clips. I don't know.
There is no right answer.
There is no right answer. And for those of you who had maybe a grandmother that sewed like I did, I just, you know, a lot of times I'm just so grateful for all the wonderful tools that we have now to work with, and just amazed at what my grandmother, I would just love to hear what my grandmother might have to say about all the things that we have, because I remember how she had to do her sewing. Anyway, it was not as easy for her as it was for us. Okay, so now we're going to sew this seam again, another 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to speed this up even more. Now, if you notice, I didn't put very many pins in here, so that shifted a little bit, so I stopped so that I could line it up better.
Is there a magic number for how to space your pins, or just personal preference?
It's just a matter of where you think it's going to hold it, basically. Some people like to use lots of pins. A lot of times I sew without pins at all. But when I'm piecing something where I want it to match exactly, I do use pins. And it's just a personal preference, I guess.
You used to get mad when I didn't use pins.
Yes, I did. Brittany was a self-starter quilter.
I just did it.
She just did. She would go to the quilt retreats with us, and she was always the youngest person. Like, how old would you say you were when you started doing that?
Oh, I don't know.
Were you in high school?
Probably still in high school.
Yeah, and so Brittany would just sew away and do her thing, and
I was pretty into charm packs, I must say.
yeah, she liked charm packs. She did her original quilts that way, and they
weren't
turned.
that exciting.
But they turned out really cute.
Still one of my favorite quilts is that Tula quilt.
Yeah, they turned out really cute, and so anyway, the ladies would walk by and they would say, "You need to use pins." She was like, "Nope." And then they were always like, she'd lay out her blocks on the floor. They were, "How can you do that?"
Now I can't.
Because she would just crawl around on the floor all the time.
Now, no.
I'll do a little confession for you guys. I actually plunked myself down on the floor in the new building when we first bought it, and everything was empty, and we were here making all our little plans on what we were going to do and everything, and I plunked myself down rather roughly onto the floor and broke my tailbone.
So don't sit on the floor, it's dangerous.
So the floor can be very hazardous. Now, we have some ladies that work with us who are my age and maybe a little bit older than me, a couple years, and they're on the floor all the time, but not me. I prefer soft, cushy places. And I really thought that my derriere was cushioned enough, but I found out otherwise. So anyway, don't do what I did.
Be careful.
Be careful. Stay off the floor. How we ended up there from talking about Brittany and her lack of pinning and being on the floor.
Well, I have to say, it was before I understood how accuracy mattered in
Yes.
the final project.
Yes, when she graduated to some of her more intricate patterns, she did start using pins.
You lose a lot of frustration when you add in tips for accuracy, which I like.
Yes. Okay. So you want to be sure you give this a nice press. I'm not, because I'm using this little iron right here. And actually, I would typically use steam and press this really good before I put my borders on, just because I like it to be nice and neat. So now we are ready to put our borders on. So what we want to do is, if you recall, let's look at our directions and see what it says.
2 that are 4 and 2 that are 6.
Yes, we do. And what Brittany suggests is to sew the left border onto the left side and press it towards the border, and then you do the right side, because you're going to do the side borders, which are the 4 sets of blocks. So I have mine all laid right here. Let me just open this up.
Those are so cute.
Don't you love 4 patches? I just love all these fun colors. Now, last night I had this all figured out so that the colors worked out just right, and I'm not even going to worry about it today. I'm just going to. I'm just being brave. I'm just going to do it. I'm trying to be less persnickety about things than my normal personality allows me to be. Okay, again, just like with the others, I'm going to pin the center seam because I want my 4 patch to match where it comes together. So I'm going to pin that right there. And yes, Brittany, on this particular time, now I'm going to use a lot more pins, just because I have little seam joints that I want to be happy and nice little.
Do you have tips for making sure that so basically there's 2 4 patches on each quote unquote applique block. Mm-hmm. So what is your tip for making sure you get that nice and center?
Okay, So I do my center first. I don't know if everybody can see this, but I've pinned my center on.
Hold it up real fast so everybody can see how many squares there are.
Should be
right? So you have 4 on the left and 4 on the right of the individual. So 2 4 patches.
Yeah. So then you want to pin to the opposite end. I'm pinning the right side together, and then I kind of hold it up and I'm like, okay, that does fit just perfectly.
That looks good.
How nice for me. And so then I'll pin the center one. And this is how I usually do it. It's kind of like divide and conquer. You pin here and here, and then you pin the middle, and then from that to that, you pin in the middle of there, and if it's still too big, you'd go in between those. So it's just enough to make it stay nice and neat. Now these, if you'll notice, there's 2 more seams in the middle of those, or a seam in between each of the, what's the nice way to say that?
So you've pinned the center of the left side, and now between the left and the left center and the right and the left center, there's a seam.
Yes. So I'm going to pin these seams. Pin your seams.
Pin all your seams.
Pin your seams, because you don't want, it makes your quilt lay flatter and nicer, so your long armor will love you better, or you'll love yourself better when you do your quilting if it's flat. And so if you don't pin your little seam allowances so they're going to stay down in the proper place as they run through the sewing machine, they have a tendency to want to flip-flop over, and that's not pleasant to deal with. You might have to take out a few stitches, and I don't like to do that.
Now, what would you do if your border was either a little bit too short or a little bit too long?
Well, if it was a little bit too short, I would have to open my seam a little bit.
Or could you make your seam a little smaller on your applique blocks?
You could do that.
Or larger, I should say. You'd make your seam bigger to make it smaller.
I want from the center to this way because we have a seam out. So from this center seam here, from where it's actually stitched to the outer edge will be 12 1/4 because we've taken 1/4 of it off. I would want to measure that and see which one was accurate. So if my applique piece was 12 1/4, then I would adjust the inside piece blocks. And actually you have more adjustability with that, I think, than you do the other. The other may be easier because it's only one seam to deal with, but it may look a little off and wonky. Whereas if you have a strip of 4 patches, let me pick one up here. If you have a strip of 4 patches and say this green one, you adjusted between these two right here, because this is a 4 patch and that's a 4 patch. Say you adjusted and made this seam a little bit smaller. Your eye is not going to notice that this might be a little bit smaller square. And it only takes a tiny bit when you're adjusting a seam allowance because you're getting double whatever you adjust. So if you move it over just a smidge, like say even a 1/16 of an inch or just another stitch line, it's like double of that. So you got to be really careful. You don't want to just like take a giant bigger seam because that's really going to take up too much. So just go in tiny little increments if you're trying to make it a little bit smaller. And likewise, if you're making it a little bit bigger, you're just going to loosen it up a little bit. So again, the easiest places to do that are going to be on your seams where you joined the 4 patches together. So start there if you have to adjust it. Did I answer that well?
Yeah, that was good. Thanks, Mom.
Okay. So I've got that side pinned, and I'm just going to go ahead and pin the other side because it's basically the same thing, right? And I'm just going to hope these don't have two colors together when I get ready to.
But you know what? Even if it does, no one else is going to see it.
No one's going to care too much like I do.
Actually, on our sample in the corner, 2 colors come together, and no one's noticed.
I didn't even notice.
I see it right now, but no one else.
Those green
noticed.
ones?
Yeah.
Well, they're not really next to each other, but they're
good friends.
They're very friendly. Yes. Are they like, hey, can you come over to my house?
They're neighbors.
They're neighbors. Hands. Yeah, they're old hands. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is where, sometimes people say, why do you have so many pins? Well, because when you're pinning things, you need a lot of pins,
So you like these kind of pins. I like to pin with those tulip applique pins.
Well, the only reason I like these is because, as I say, my fingers aren't juicy anymore and they're easier to pick up for me.
Oh, the little yellow end of
The little end, it's got little grippy grooves on it, and so it's real easy to get a grip on it and pick it up. But I do like the short applique pins because it gives me more, I don't have to worry about running over them when I sew as much.
And these are nice and short too.
And they're
I also
thin.
just love the packaging of the tulip ones.
They are more fun.
Yeah.
Yes. And my medical background, having something come in a test tube just really thrills me.
So cute, right?
Yeah. When I was in school and we, in organic chemistry, one of the guys said that if he flunked out of school, he was going to open a bar and serve everything in beakers and test tubes.
That's funny.
Fortunately, I think he made it all the way through school. So that was good.
That's funny.
Yeah. Okay, so now I have these pinned and I'm ready to stitch. So I'm going to lay this up here and go for it. Now Why am I slowing down? It's because underneath where I have my center seam, I want to make sure that that's going to lay totally flat. Even though I've pinned it really well, I think, I just want it to be nice and flat. Can everybody hear me with this machine going?
I would hope so. You have a microphone.
Oh, that's right, I forgot.
Hot mic.
Hot mic, hot mic. The reason I asked is because I was thinking this machine is a little bit louder than the one I was sewing on at home last night. Actually,
it seems louder in this building.
You know, because it's not fully furnished yet.
Exactly.
So everything's echoing in here, you guys, so we apologize for that. Pretty soon we'll have everything all set up.
We'll be all done unpacking.
Yeah. We're just limping along right now.
No, we're fully functional downstairs.
No, I mean with having everything unpacked. You know, we still have to dig in a box every now and then for something. Okay, so now I'm going to take all my little pins out.
I'm excited to see it.
Are you?
Yeah.
Good. It's been a fun little quilt. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. I have. And fortunately, we're going to have 2 of them now.
I know, because I really do want one.
Yeah. It's just nice to have a fun little happy, cheerful table topper.
Mm-hmm.
You know, put on your table. Just make it look festive. These also make great gifts.
Oh, this especially because it's not too hard.
Okay, so again, we're going to press our seam, as Brittany says in the directions, towards our border. So I'm setting my little seam
Now,
first.
if they wanted to, could they go open? They could go open if they wanted, no?
Yeah, if you want to. It's your quilt. You can do what you want. I think it's either way is fine, you know. And that's the thing I think everybody needs to remember. You are the boss of your quilt, as Lori Holt says. You're the boss of your own quilt.
And no quilt police.
No quilt police. And you know, I think
cute.
I think we may be our harshest critics ourselves, you know. Like, I really wish that I was using a bigger iron right now.
Yeah, I love this iron for applique, but when you are doing
when you're doing stuff like this, you really need to. But for demonstration purposes, this works really well in here now. But I'm going to make some changes in the future. I think
you have so many irons.
I'm going to have a lot of irons in the fire in the building.
There you go.
Do you know where that saying came from, Brittany? Irons
like
in the fire?
Blacksmithing?
Huh?
Like when for blacksmithing?
Well, they used to have to put the irons, you know, when they ironed.
Oh, I was
you
thinking
know,
like iron they would hit, like an actual iron they would have to put in the fire?
Well, they'd put it right by the fire or, you know, heat it up right there at the fire. Yeah, so you'd say it was in the fire. You know what? I have one of those irons at home, so you know what they look like.
I do. Great doorstops.
Mine's just for looks.
That would be a very dangerous way to iron. I think I'd rather be wrinkled.
Oh, and just think those poor ladies had those big old dresses to iron.
It must have been so hot.
Ugh, yes.
I would have only ironed in the winter.
Just think of Gone with the Wind in Georgia, in the humidity and the heat, and wearing those dresses.
Oh, goodness.
I'd swoon too.
I swoon now.
There'd definitely be some swooning going on. It wouldn't just be because of Rhett, would it?
Oh, what?
Rhett Butler.
Oh, was that his name? Okay.
Yes, Clark Gable was Rhett Butler.
I've watched that movie one time. It's very long.
It is very long.
Just keeps going.
Yep. Okay, so now we have those 2 on. Dun dun dun.
That looks
the sides.
good.
Okay, so now we're going to put our tops on. And let's see which top will fit. Hopefully they'll fit, but let's see which one will go well. Okay, that's not going to work because there's green to green. And this one, does it work this way? Green to green. Let's try this one. At least there's two to try, right? Okay, this is better.
We're winning.
That's good.
We're winning.
That's a good one. So I'm going to check down here and let's just cross our fingers and hope that this one will work down here.
But like I said, there's two together on our sample and no one notices.
Yeah, but if you can avoid it. And it works. Look. Yay. Yay, I'm so happy. Okay, so I'm going to flip this one up and I'm going to put a pin. I'm not going to put it perfectly here. I'm going to have to adjust it. This is just to hold it so that I can
move on the other side.
Move around, yeah. So I'll keep that one in the right order. And then this one, I'm going to do again. And so again, what we're doing is exactly what we did before. We're starting with the center and pinning in the center. Of course, this is how I like to do it, and we'll know for sure that it works right. So I pin my center. I'm going to come down to the end and pin that. And then I'm going to pin where my 4 patches come together right here, which these work out so they're nesting nicely.
Here, come over just a little bit, there you go, and make sure they see what
This is the very first 4 patch here. These come together, and this is nesting right here where it joins on the sides. So that makes me happy. And then this little guy is not quite perfect. Now, how is that possible? That frustrates me quite to no end because I can tell by looking at this I don't have enough seam allowance to make it come out perfectly. So I'll tell you ladies, what I'm going to do is just let it go. Sometimes you have to let it go.
Is that a Frozen song?
I don't know.
Let it go, let it go.
Oh, yes, those poor mothers that had to listen to that incessantly. I always felt sorry, and I was so happy that you weren't little when that came out.
Cinderella doesn't. Oh, well, that's Bibbidi Bob. That was my movie.
Oh gosh, Brittany knew the words to the entire movie.
If you put on closed captioning, it tells you what the birds are saying too.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, who knew?
Me.
Yeah. Okay, so what you're going to do is just pin all the way across, top and bottom, and then stitch it. Are we going to use the magic of technology and speed this up so they don't have to watch me, or?
Yeah, smile.
Okay, everybody, you got your seams sewed. And now I'm pulling out all my little pins, and then I'm going to press them. And I'm going to press these seams also to the border.
Did you sew both seams?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, I sat here and watched you and only saw one. That's hilarious.
See? Ta-da!
Oh, cute.
It's going to be adorable. And I suggest take this to your big iron, to your ironing board, and you can press this much nicer than I will be doing here. But this will work in a pinch. You know how we're good at making things work, right? And your seams should come out.
Yeah, let's see how they did. Can I look?
You can look.
Can I zoom in?
Zoom in.
Oh, that looks great.
See, and the colors are pretty good too.
All from good pinning.
Yep. Can everybody see my applique?
Yeah.
Oh, do you see that I didn't get it all stitched?
Oh, well, I wasn't looking that close.
Oh, well, ladies.
It's for the magic of video.
It's for video,
it's
and
like a
so
cooking show, and they put the turkey in, and 2 minutes later it comes out cooked.
Yeah.
That's what's happening here.
Except it's not cooked.
It's half cooked.
It's half cooked. Only some of the applique is done.
I can't see it through the camera, so hopefully you
Oh.
don't notice.
Well,
But it will be sewn, of course.
this will be sewn and finished, yes.
Because we both want a quilt.
Yeah, sometimes I just especially like, everything. Well, I like everything. It's not that
I pretty much want to take everything home that you do.
And you do.
Yes.
But sometimes I want one too, and I'm like, well, I want that, So that's how that works. So you want to give all your seams a press out, and then you are ready to go and get your quilt quilted, right?
Yeah, so we're going to have some bonus videos talking about how we have the long arm service available for this, where it'll be quilted just like the sample. And then we also have videos coming out about, of course, the binding technique that you do for perfect mitered corners and no special tools needed.
No tools.
And tips on how to do your hanging sleeve if you want to make this a wall hanging instead of a table topper.
Yeah.
And
now,
that can be applied to any quilt.
oh yeah, those are all things that can go for any quilt. I was going to say something.
About
one thing that some people like to do, I know from when my sister and I used to do a long arm business before we started doing this, Brittany and I, and so some of our customers like to send us quilts, and we always enjoyed it when they did, where they stitched like a scant 1/4 inch around the outer edge of their quilt, kind of helps stabilize the edges. And it was also very nice to handle. So that's something that you might want to do with your quilt, your little topper. If you're going to send it away, you might want to do that little stitch around the edge. It just helps secure your little seams from your 4 patches. It's not necessary, but it's kind of nice if you want to do that.
Yeah.
Or especially if you're maybe going to have to put this away before you can get it quilted. Like if you can't get to it right now because it's getting to be a busy time of the year, then you might want to do that just for storage purposes. So anyway, just an idea. And there's our little topper.
That looks so good. I love the borders on it. So next will be the videos we just mentioned about hanging sleeve binding and quilting.
Yes. So we hope you're having fun with this, and best of luck putting your borders on and stitching your block together. Happy stitching!